You know that feeling. A tight knot in your stomach that arrives long before the actual date. A specific, deep dread reserved for the one day of the year that is supposed to be yours. For adult children of narcissistic parents, birthdays are rarely a simple celebration. They are often a deeply complex and painful emotional minefield. A stark reminder of the chronic emotional instability or outright absence that defined our childhoods. This wasn't just about a forgotten gift or a subpar cake. It was about the crushing realization that your moment of significance, the commemoration of your very existence, was fundamentally unimportant, or worse, co-opted and weaponized for your parents' own emotional supply. The suffering has been a quiet, lifelong companion, manifesting as an inability to fully receive joy or feel worthy of attention, and for too long, you've carried the heavy, unspoken belief that you must minimize your needs to simply survive the day. But this narrative can finally change. We are here to illuminate the subtle, yet devastating ways this pattern set in, and begin the real work of reclaiming your sense of self and the simple right to celebrate the day you were born. When a child grows up with a narcissistic parent, their world is fundamentally unstable, built on the shifting sand of the parent's emotional state, rather than a consistent foundation of unconditional love. The child quickly learns that the parent's needs are paramount, and the emotional environment is constantly tuned to whether the parent is being admired, satisfied, or feeling slighted, leaving no genuine space for the child's own emerging emotional landscape. Birthdays, which should be sanctuaries of focused, positive attention, instead become highly charged performances where the child's role is to manage the parent's mood, ensuring the day doesn't devolve into a tantrum, criticism, or dramatic display that inevitably shifts the spotlight. The young self, desperate for connection and safety, begins to internalize a devastating belief. If I can just be good enough, quiet enough, or successful enough, the pain will stop, and I will finally receive the love I need. This internalization of responsibility is the birth of the pain, where the child assumes the burden of the parent's happiness. This childhood experience of emotional instability forces the child into the unnatural role of emotional caretaker, perpetually walking on eggshells around the one person who should be providing safety. You learn to interpret the slightest shift in tone, the subtle tightening of facial muscles, or the pregnant silence, becoming a finely tuned instrument for measuring and predicting the emotional weather of the home. The true emotional self, the child who longs to simply play, to fail safely, and to be seen as they are, is quietly archived, replaced by the diligent, hyper-aware self who prioritizes appeasement. It is a profound, silent sacrifice of authenticity for the illusion of safety, a pattern that silently repeats every time a birthday approaches, triggering the old, deeply grooved survival response to minimize and manage. The pain is not about the day itself, but the echo of the unfulfilled need for safe, unconditional celebration. This dynamic quickly leads to a profound role inversion, where the child is effectively parentified, assuming responsibilities far beyond their developmental capacity. You become the miniature adult, the mediator, the confidant, and often, the one responsible for validating the parent's fragile ego, a psychological burden that strips away the carefree essence of childhood. The traditional healthy structure where the parent provides and the child receives is completely upended, replaced by a system where the child must constantly deliver emotional goods to maintain equilibrium, or at least avoid confrontation. Your developing self-worth becomes inextricably tied not to your inherent value, but to your utility in serving the narcissistic narrative. The ultimate survival skill learned in this environment is the ability to read the environment and become the stabilizer, an invisible psychological radar always scanning for threats. You learn to anticipate needs before they are spoken, to self-edit every spontaneous impulse, and to curate your emotions, ensuring they never clash with or overshadow the parent's current emotional state. This hypervigilance means that a celebration, like a birthday, transforms from a joyful event into a high-stakes performance where any genuine expression of happiness or need on your part risks a devastating emotional fallout. The stabilizer role ensures you survive the day, but at the cost of your authentic joy, laying the groundwork for a lifetime of feeling undeserving of simple, self-focused pleasure. The psychological mechanism at play here is not merely a strained relationship, It is a full-scale survival response rooted in chronic parentification and the subsequent development of hypervigilance. Parentification, felt not as a clinical term, but as a crushing weight of adult responsibility on a child's small shoulders, means you were robbed of your own childhood to fulfill the emotional vacuum in your parent's life. It feels like a silent contract signed without your consent, obligating you to be the mature one, the reliable one, the one who never adds to the chaos. This burden conditions you to equate love with service and relaxation with danger. The companion survival response to this role inversion is hypervigilance, an internal alarm system that never shuts off, constantly monitoring the emotional landscape for the smallest tremor of disapproval or rage. It is the feeling of perpetually holding your breath, a physical manifestation of the need to be ready to deflect, absorb, or disappear at a moment's notice. In adulthood, this translates into an intense difficulty with rest, a profound distrust of genuine calm, and the instinct to constantly be on, managing everyone else's comfort. This deeply ingrained survival pattern ensures that even in moments that should be relaxing and self-affirming, like your birthday, the old alarm bells ring, turning simple celebration into exhausting work. In this environment, a true, authentic self becomes a liability, and the child quickly develops an elaborate mask or a performer identity to survive. This masking is not a conscious choice, but a desperate, self-protective strategy where the child disappears behind a curated persona, designed entirely to please and avoid conflict with the narcissistic parent. You become a reflection of what you are supposed to be, whether the perpetual high achiever, the quiet peacemaker, or the invisible helper, anything to ensure the parent remains satisfied and the environment stable. The real self, with its messy needs and imperfections, is meticulously hidden away, left to wither in the shadows. This creation of the performer identity is the core of self-disappearance. You learn to disassociate from your own desires and feelings because they were consistently met with indifference, ridicule, or outright punishment. The performer becomes the only acceptable face, skilled at adapting to any audience, charming when needed, and always downplaying their own accomplishments lest they draw negative attention. The wound is profound. You are loved only for what you do or provide, never for simply being. In the context of a birthday, this performer's self takes over, preemptively minimizing the celebration, feeling almost fraudulent in receiving attention, because the real self knows it must remain unseen to be safe. The tragedy of this performance is the silent wound carried by the inner child, who remains unvalidated and starved for genuine connection, their unmet needs echoing into adulthood. That younger self, who simply wanted a parent to be reliably happy for them, who longed for simple eye contact and an acknowledgement of their worth, is still very much alive within, often manifesting as sudden, irrational, emotional reactions. This inner child doesn't care about the adult's accomplishments. They are only mourning the primal loss of a safe, celebratory, and unconditionally loving environment. Their unmet needs, for safety, mirroring, emotional regulation, and simple, pure joy, are the driving force behind many adult patterns. When you feel a sudden, inexplicable urge to withdraw from praise or sabotage a moment of genuine happiness, it is often this silent inner child recoiling from the risk of being seen and then inevitably criticized, as they were so many times before. The continued presence of this vulnerable self, whose birthday wishes were always overshadowed, is why true, unadulterated pleasure can feel profoundly dangerous even decades later. Healing requires us to finally turn toward that child and witness their suffering. These deeply ingrained survival patterns don't simply vanish when you leave the narcissistic home. They manifest in devastating ways in adult life, particularly in relationships, self-worth, and the ability to find true rest. In adult relationships, the hypervigilance transforms into a chronic difficulty with trust, where you constantly test your partners or friends, convinced that any moment of closeness will inevitably lead to betrayal or pain. You struggle to receive love, often pushing it away because the child inside still equates attention with the expectation of a forthcoming demand or criticism. This history profoundly shapes self-worth, which often remains conditional, tied to performance, achievement, or being the good one in every scenario, leading to chronic people-pleasing. The simple act of rest becomes nearly impossible, as the internal narrative whispers that only productivity justifies your existence, and true relaxation is lazy or irresponsible, echoing the parent who could never truly relax and always found fault. Emotional regulation is also impaired, as you were never taught how to safely process difficult feelings, only how to suppress them for the parent's comfort, leading to adult patterns of emotional shutdown or explosive reactions that feel terrifyingly out of control. The reason these patterns are so sticky, so hard to dislodge, lies in a fundamental biological and emotional reasoning: the instinctual, primal need for attachment. For a child, attachment to a primary caregiver is literally a matter of survival, and the brain will sacrifice almost anything to maintain that essential bond, even if the caregiver is emotionally abusive. This is why the child of a narcissistic parent makes the devastating subconscious choice to sacrifice authenticity, the true self, for the sake of perceived attachment and survival. The brain says, being seen as I am is too dangerous and will lead to abandonment, but being seen as I should be keeps me alive. This sacrifice is an act of deep, instinctive emotional reasoning, a testament to the power of the attachment drive, not a flaw in the child's character. The constant pursuit of the narcissistic parent's approval, even when it's clearly unattainable, is the brain running the only program it was given for survival. If I try harder, if I'm perfect, I'll be safe. This biological imperative explains the adult pattern of returning to unhealthy relational dynamics, because the chaotic yet familiar push and pull feels instinctively correct on a cellular level, even as it causes immense conscious pain. Healing is the process of reprogramming this ancient survival code. The long-term emotional and relational effects of this upbringing are deep and pervasive, coloring every area of adult life through a lens of internal narratives rooted in shame and self-blame. The pervasive internal narrative often sounds like, I am too much, or conversely, I am not enough, a constant dualistic criticism that sabotages self-acceptance and fuels perfectionism. This narrative is the voice of the parent internalized, a relentless critic that prevents genuine intimacy and self-compassion. It leads to coping styles like emotional numbing, workaholism, or chronic seeking of external validation, all attempts to silence the deep-seated discomfort. Relationally, this history often manifests as either chronic avoidance, fearing intimacy and the inevitable pain it might bring, or a tendency towards anxious attachment, where you desperately cling to partners, terrified of re-experiencing the childhood abandonment. The ability to advocate for your own needs remains severely underdeveloped because the child learned that having needs was a catalyst for conflict, not a normal part of human connection. The deepest consequence is a fundamental sense of self-alienation, a feeling of being a ghost in your own life, constantly observing and managing, but rarely genuinely participating. Before we move on to how we start to break these patterns, I want to ask you a deeply personal question, one that acknowledges the silent battle you've been fighting. What is the single, persistent emotion that surfaces every time a significant personal moment, like your birthday, approaches? Does it feel like dread, shame, or a profound urge to disappear? You don't have to write a long story, but I'd love for you to go down to the comments right now and simply copy and paste this phrase. I feel the urge to disappear. When you share that small piece of your truth, you help someone else scrolling through realize they are not alone. Please pause for a moment and take that step, and when you're done, like the video. The first true step toward healing and breaking these destructive patterns is the act of awareness, the courageous choice to witness your pain without judgment. This means consciously choosing to observe the intrusive, critical internal narrative, the echo of the narcissistic parent's voice, as an external entity rather than the core truth of who you are. The goal is not to fix or change it yet, but simply to hold space for the fact that this happened, and this is how it affected me. This act of witnessing is profoundly radical because it begins to break the cycle of self-gaslighting. Self-gaslighting is the insidious habit of telling yourself that the past wasn't that bad, that you are being overly dramatic, or that you should just get over it. All patterns that were modeled by the parent themselves. Breaking this requires validating the child's experience, saying to your inner self, your pain was real. What happened was not okay. You were not the problem. Witnessing means allowing yourself to feel the grief of the childhood you deserved but never received, recognizing that this simple acknowledgement is the bedrock upon which all future healing is built. A moment of profound psychological truth-telling. For many adult children of narcissistic parents, the resulting wound is often hidden behind a facade of high functioning, chronic responsibility, and impressive outward success. You are the one everyone relies on, the person who effortlessly organizes, achieves, and solves problems, a direct result of the relentless training you received to be useful and perfect. But underneath this competent exterior is a deep, unacknowledged exhaustion, a perpetual state of emotional suppression where every success is followed not by joy, but by the frantic search for the next task. The survival pattern has become your personality. This high functioning is, in essence, a sophisticated adult version of the child's desperate attempt to earn love and safety. You carry a chronic, invisible responsibility for the emotions and outcomes of those around you, a compulsion to manage the environment that leaves you perpetually drained and unable to relax fully. The emotional suppression that started as a survival technique becomes a deeply ingrained pattern, making it difficult to even recognize what you truly feel or want. Healing here means recognizing that this competence is a survival mechanism, not the full breadth of your identity, and that you deserve rest and authenticity even without a task to complete. The legacy of narcissistic parenting is constantly revealed in small, often overlooked ongoing patterns in adulthood, such as chronic breath holding and a deep-seated need for permission-seeking. Breath holding is a physical manifestation of that childhood hypervigilance, a subtle, constant tension in the body, ready to brace for impact. It is a sign that the nervous system is still stuck in fight or flight, perpetually scanning for a threat that is no longer there, yet constantly impacting your ability to relax and be present. To simply take a full, deep, unapologetic breath is an act of defiance against the past. The compulsion to seek permission, for joy, for rest, for expressing a need, or even for celebrating yourself, is another powerful manifestation of the legacy. The inner child still believes that their existence and choices must be sanctioned by an external authority, because their own internal compass was consistently invalidated. This recognition requires gently interrupting the urge to ask, "Is this okay?" and replacing it with a quiet internal affirmation, "This is what I need, and that is enough." To claim your own space, your own joy, and your own life without seeking external validation is the slow, steady process of dismantling the legacy. The path forward leads directly into the essential work of the reparenting process, which involves turning inward and consciously providing the inner child with everything that was not received. This is not about blaming the past, but about actively creating a new internal parent figure who is unconditionally loving, safe, and emotionally available. It means learning to validate and soothe your own pain, to hold your own hand during moments of self-doubt, and to speak to yourself with the tenderness you always deserved. The true power of this work lies in consistency and gentle perseverance. Reparenting yourself means giving that inner child the gift of boundaries, a protective structure that tells the world, "This is who I am, and this is how I deserve to be treated." It involves consciously celebrating small victories, and crucially, allowing yourself to feel and express negative emotions without the internal threat of abandonment or punishment. It is the steady, daily practice of choosing self-compassion over self-criticism, and it is the only way to replace the shaky foundation of the past with a new, solid ground built on self-trust and unconditional self-acceptance. Healing is not simply about focusing on the positive. It requires courageous shadow work, which means turning toward the pain with honesty and sitting with the inevitable grief that arises. The shadow is the part of ourselves, the messy, unloved, and rejected aspects that we pushed away because the narcissistic environment deemed them unacceptable. This includes the anger, the profound sadness, the shame, and the vulnerable needs that were once suppressed for survival. To heal, you must reclaim and integrate these parts. Sitting with grief is a crucial component of this work, allowing yourself to mourn the loss of the functional, loving parental relationship you should have had, and the loss of the carefree childhood that was stolen. This grief is not a failure. It is a profound testament to your humanity, and a necessary release of the energy that has been bound up in holding the pain in. Shadow work is the radical act of saying, "I am going to bring the light of my consciousness to the darkest places within me," knowing that true wholeness is achieved not by eliminating the darkness, but by loving all of yourself, even the broken pieces. The deep-seated patterns born from narcissistic parenting inevitably resurface in adult relational examples, often manifesting in the choice of partners and the dynamics within those relationships. You might find yourself consistently drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, unconsciously seeking to replay the original trauma in the desperate hope of a different, healing outcome, a pattern known as repetition compulsion. Or you might become the perpetual fixer in your relationships, convinced that if you can just make your partner happy, you will finally be safe and loved. Another common manifestation is the profound discomfort with simple, uncomplicated kindness or genuine reciprocality, where you feel more at ease in a dynamic that requires you to earn your worth. You may also notice an immediate urge to apologize, even when you have done nothing wrong. A reflex action from childhood designed to preemptively soothe a looming threat. Recognizing these specific, concrete relational examples is critical, as it moves the trauma out of the abstract and into the observable, allowing you to intercept the pattern and choose a healthier, more authentic response in real time. To effectively navigate the reparenting and shadow work, we must return to foundational questions that center the inner child's emotional needs. The most critical question to ask is not, "What did I do wrong?" but, "What did my inner child truly need that they didn't receive?" The answers will almost universally revolve around core emotional needs. The need to be truly seen and mirrored, the need for safety and predictable warmth, the need for validation of their feelings, and the profound need for unconditional acceptance. Exploring these emotional needs is not an exercise in wallowing, but an act of precise emotional archaeology, identifying the specific deficiencies that must now be deliberately and compassionately filled by your adult self. Did the inner child need permission to be imperfect? Did they need their creativity affirmed? Did they simply need a parent who was happy for them and not at them? Answering these questions illuminates the exact steps required for inner child healing, guiding the self-compassion you pour back into your past and present self. As you commit to this work, the profound transformation begins to occur, evidenced by the emergence of entirely new patterns in your life, a deepening sense of safety, the confident establishment of boundaries, and the blossoming of authentic self-expression. The feeling of safety is perhaps the most significant shift, an internal calm that replaces the chronic hypervigilance, allowing the nervous system to finally downshift from constant emergency. You begin to feel safe in your own body, a sanctuary where you can simply be without a task or performance required. Boundaries shift from a theoretical concept to an inherent felt sense of protection, a quiet no that is spoken without apology or excessive explanation. This newfound solidity in your boundaries creates space for authentic connection, filtering out those who thrive on chaos and drawing in those who respect true reciprocity. Authenticity emerges as the ability to share your true thoughts and feelings without the paralyzing fear of abandonment, a gradual, courageous unfolding that signals you are no longer the frightened performer, but the author of your own fully lived life. There is an old saying often attributed to the spiritual traditions that states, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." This ancient wisdom speaks directly to the experience of the adult child of a narcissistic parent. The love you seek, the unconditional acceptance, the safety, the validation, is not external. It has always been within you. The work is simply identifying the carefully constructed psychological defenses, the high-functioning walls, and the masked persona that you built to survive, which now inadvertently prevent you from receiving the love you already possess. This reference serves as a gentle reminder that healing is less about the arduous climb to a new self, and more about the quiet, deliberate dismantling of the architecture of pain. It is crucial to understand that healing is not about becoming a new person, fixing a broken self, or eradicating the past. Healing is fundamentally about reclaiming the identity that was overshadowed and suppressed in childhood. You are not starting from scratch. You are excavating the genuine self that was placed in storage for the sake of survival, the essential you that the narcissistic parent could not tolerate. This redefinition removes the pressure of having to perform a perfect recovery, which would simply be a continuation of the old performance patterns. Reclaiming identity means integrating all aspects of your experience: the child who suffered, the adult who survived, and the person who is now choosing to thrive. It's an act of profound self-acceptance, recognizing that your sensitivity, your empathy, and even the complexity of your emotions are not weaknesses to be fixed, but essential components of your authentic strength. You are not seeking a new you. You are finally choosing to fully inhabit the remarkable person you have always been, a person who survived the unimaginable and is now learning to live freely. The final step in this journey is a beautiful, compassionate ending integration, a full reflection on becoming whole and reconnecting with the inner child in a relationship of mutual trust. This is the moment when the adult self becomes the safe, reliable attachment figure the child always deserved, creating an internal peace that transcends external circumstances. The inner child is no longer a silent wound or a source of panic, but a cherished, protected part of your wholeness, whose needs are now attentively met. This integration allows you to rewrite the script for life's significant moments. A birthday is no longer an obligation or a performance, but a simple, heartfelt opportunity to celebrate the enduring strength of the person you have become. It is a quiet acknowledgement that the old patterns have lost their power, replaced by a profound self-trust and the grounded knowing that you are worthy of all the good things that life and your own care can bring. The work is an endless journey, but the lightness of being you gain is the truest victory. If this message resonated with the quiet, struggling part of you that has been trying to make sense of your past, if you felt seen and understood today, then I invite you to stay connected to this community. By subscribing, you are not just hitting a button, you are making a conscious choice to put your healing first, choosing to walk a path where you are consistently supported, validated, and guided with empathy. This space is a sanctuary for those of us learning to shed the skin of old survival mechanisms and step into the incredible, authentic power that has been waiting all along. Every week, we break down these complex psychological legacies so you can have the tools you need to finally reclaim your life. Please join us and let us continue this important journey together. Know that you are seen, you are valued, and your healing is absolutely possible.